Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome Franco Lombardo to the program to share some time with us on his perspective on why rich kids hate their parents. Franco, welcome. How are things out there in Vancouver?
I'm glad to be home on a day like this. It's the first day of spring, and Vancouver's looking at its finest. Clear skies, the flowers are blooming, and people are happy. So, yeah.
It sounds like you're enjoying an early spring out there.
Oh, very much so.
I'm glad to hear it. Now, you've been traveling. You've been around the country and even in different parts of North America in the last little while. Is that not so?
Yes. I was in Calgary for the last 3 days. I was facilitating a YPO spousal forum group around how to have conversations with spouses and children about money and wealth. And I was in New York City last week attending my friend Kirby Rossblatt's book launch at the Harvard Clubs, and it was a treat to be there and see Kirby in all of her glory and getting the attention that she so much deserves. It was great to be there with her.
I've actually picked up Kirby's book, and we'll be talking a little bit about it today during our conversation. For the listeners and the families listening to the interview that aren't necessarily familiar with you just yet, but I'm sure at some point after this conversation they'll see value in reaching out to you and to what you do. I'll share a little bit more about who you are. Franco Lombardo, ladies and gentlemen, is a renowned speaker and advisor who's coached some of North America's wealthiest families for almost 20 years now. Through his extensive work with business families, Franco has identified a universal dynamic and unexamined connection between the individual and the relationship they have with money and the impact this relationship has on their families and businesses. Franco is a much sought-after speaker globally and has spoken to the Canadian Institute of Chartered Accountants, the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners, the Family Office Association, the Young Presidents Association, and Tiger 21. And if you haven't had a chance to see him, he's also been featured on Money Talks on BNN and the morning show on Global TV. I've personally had an opportunity to meet with Franco at a private equity family office event in New York City at the Harvard Club, and I can truly attest to some of this information on his biography that he is a passionate, engaging speaker. Franco, why don't we just jump right in? And I want to get to know you and have our audience get to know you a bit more. Why do you do what you do?
That's a great question, and I don't get that asked very often. The reason I do what I do is I have a great passion for families and for them getting along. You see, growing up as a child, I didn't have a connection with my parents, and I was very much left to fend for myself and to self-develop myself. And nothing breaks my heart more than to see families of wealth who have typically one of the biggest challenges that families have, money taken care of, and yet they can't seem to get along. So I strive to create harmony in families and help them get better connected and just love each other more. That's really why I do what I do.
That answer is a great answer, but I'd like to go a little bit deeper on that. And as our conversation unfolds, you'll find that I'll ask questions that reach maybe 2 or 3 layers below standard interview questions. And in this first response that you've given, I'd like to understand, well, how do you see that making a difference? How is that good for maybe the community and the larger connectivity of people around the family if they are able to communicate and resolve their issues more effectively through what you do? How does that help anybody else besides the family?
Well, I think that as human beings, we tend to be silos. We're stuck in our own little world, and we don't connect enough with others. And we can't connect with others unless we're truly connected with ourselves at a deep, intimate level. It's like an analogy of, I can't pour you a glass of water from a bottle that's half empty. That's empty. The bottle has to be full. And I think at the end of the day, it's all about connection and loving oneself. And
wow, okay.
the more time we spend doing that for ourselves, the more we can do it for others.
That's a powerful statement, and I'd like to leverage that statement to dive into your book that you've, and I know you've got a new one coming out, but this book that I'm quoting from is called "The Great White Elephant: Why Rich Kids Hate Their Parents." On one of the pages in this book, I'd like to read you some of the words that you've written, and I'd like you just to expand on the sentiment I'm about to read, and I'm going to dive right in. Here's what the quote says, or the passage says. You said, "I see this all now. I am 46 years old, and the next step for me is to not only love and accept myself, but to fall in love with myself. So, what am I learning? In retrospect, as I look back on this most recent relationship that fell apart, I gave her everything, except the one thing that really mattered to her. From the outset of our relationship, she told me that the most important thing in the relationship for her was integrity. Her definition of integrity was, be your word. In my relationship with her, I did not live or act from a place of complete integrity, and thus I did not give her what she wanted most. As a consequence, the relationship ended. What am I learning in all of this? You respond, to give relationships what they need. I'd like you to expand on that sentiment and tell us more about what you learned about yourself through that experience, and go further and tell us how that experience equips you to better serve families.
Well, my friend, you sure like to dig, and I love it for that. You know, I'm speaking for myself here. When I got into that relationship, I was pretending to be someone that I was not. You know, I was pretending to be available, which I wasn't. I was still in another relationship when I started this one, and I pretended to be wealthier than who I was. I was putting on an image of what I thought she wanted me to be, and I was too afraid to say, you know what, I'm not really who you think I am, and be absolutely transparent with her. And as a result of that, the relationship ended. And, you know, I have had, and I still struggle with this, you know, insecurities like a lot of us do, but my insecurities stem from a place of, am I really good enough? So I will pretend to inflate myself bigger than who I actually am or what I actually have. And that's the big lesson that I learned from there, is just be me, you know, and be transparent and share my insecurities and my struggles and my wins and my victories, but don't sugarcoat them, right? Now, I share them not to be a victim now. I share them to say, here's where I'm at, and here's the action that I'm taking to overcome where I'm at. So there's a huge difference. Another lesson that I learned in that relationship was my definition of vulnerability was sharing with her what my wound was, what my brokenness was. But I would stay there, so I would stay a victim. Again, instead of saying, you know, here's what I'm dealing with, but more importantly, here's the action that I'm taking to get out of it. So a couple lessons that I learned there were, number one, to be authentic, and number two, to be committed to growing. And how we grow is by taking action. You know, I recently attended a leadership program last year, which was profound. It was called the Authentic Speaker Academy for Leadership. Okay. And one of the codes of conduct and principles there was, are you interested or committed? And the difference between interested and committed is action. You know, we're all interested in losing weight and being healthier, but what action are we taking to do that? So now, when I recognize a negative piece, I say that's what it is, and here's the action that I'm taking. So I hope that answers your question.
No, it does. It goes deeper than most folks would probably be willing to share, and thank you for being willing to be authentic in this conversation.
And, you know, the reason I do it is it's something that I'm striving towards. I'm not there all the time. I also recognize the power it has, right? So the more authentic that I am, the more I open up my kimono, what I realize is it gives people permission to feel safe and do the same. It's like they feel they have to reciprocate. And in the work that we do, it's all about, okay, let's see who you really are. What are you really struggling with, and how can we overcome where you are in having a break forward instead of a breakthrough?
Different perspective, certainly, that is thinking that moves us forward. And you definitely addressed that question about how that experience equipped you to better serve families. It sounds like you gave yourself permission to have more meaningful conversations with these families.
Well, it's funny, as human beings, we're taught how to talk, but we're not really taught how to have conversations. And, for me, the definition of a conversation is about being absolutely transparent as I can possibly be, and show deep compassion in the conversation, and not hold back, worried about whether I'm going to offend or hurt someone's feelings. As a friend of mine once told me, conversations are two ways. My responsibility is to be as transparent as I can with you, and your responsibility is how you choose to react.
Yes.
Because you have choice in how you react. And I think what I've learned is I have been a people pleaser in the past, and I still have that tendency, it's still in me, to want people to like me. So in the past, I've sugarcoated things and lied as I did in that past relationship, and it's cost me. So now I am just as transparent as I can, and to have compassion when I'm delivering something that could be sensitive for the recipient.
As I listen to those words that you've stated about being authentic and being transparent, it sounds to me that because you've lived this particular experience and been comfortable sharing it, that you're able to detect in conversations with families that you work with when they're not being transparent, when they're not being authentic. Do you call them on it?
In a gentle way, yes. And I think, I'm like all of us. We all have that big, a BS antenna. Some of us it's more refined than others. Like my mentor, his is like sharp as a razor, right? So, as I've developed mine, I pick up on stuff like that, and it's the incongruencies or congruencies, and I'll just, I'll call them on it by asking them a question.
Can you give me an example?
Really,
yeah, give me an example.
Sure. So if someone says to me, so in the work that we do, we help uncover values, and values are different meanings for different people. So we help them really get clear and define what their values are. So if someone says I'm being transparent, and their definition of transparency is I treat everybody the same, and I know that about them, and we're in conversation, and they're giving me an example as to when they've not done that, I will gently say, well, so help me understand, were you transparent in that situation? Yeah, I really was. Okay, I hear you. So based on your definition of you treat everybody the same, let's go back and visit the situation. They'll get it.
Okay. One other thing you mentioned that I want to go back into, and then we'll move on to the next part of question that I want to get your perspective on. I want to understand what you meant by when you made the statement, are you interested or are you committed? That's a pretty bold approach to a relationship. And how do you make a difference or distinction, in whether a client or a family is interested or just committed to either your conversation or even to themselves and moving themselves forward? How do you distinguish, and what is the result of your being able to distinguish that?
Okay, and again, I want to give credit to where that code of conduct comes from. It's from my mentor, Dov Baron's Authentic Speaker Academy for Leadership.
Okay.
So, interested or committed is all action based,
okay.
Right? So I could be interested in being healthy. Okay, so what does being healthy mean to me? Okay, so it means, like I'll go to the gym and I'll eat healthy and I'll reduce.
Yeah, I enjoy the occasional glass of wine when I'm unwinding, but I wanted to go a little bit further and find out how that translates into a family. So here's a scenario. I'll give you a scenario.
Okay.
So let's say, Client picks up your book, and this is a third generation family enterprise, and there are more complexities than can be satisfied by a technical analysis from a tax perspective or investment or legal perspective. There's some deep human issues here, and you know it because you've spoken to many of these families across the globe. So they read your book, and they decide to reach out to you, and they call you, and you're in their office, and they say, tell us what you do a little bit more so we can see if we need your services. And you tell them, and then they say, we'll think about it. What happens then on your end?
So one of the after the pleasantries of meeting a new
Sure.
potential client, there's a couple questions that I ask within the first probably 10 minutes. The first one is why we're here.
Perfect. It's just clarify why we're here.
And the second one is what's the great white elephant that you've been avoiding in your family? What's the issue that we need to deal with? And they'll say, well, it's XYZ. And I say, okay, great. What's the action you're prepared to take to deal with that?
Oh, that's pretty direct.
Well, and I'm not being firm. I'm just being compassionately direct.
Yeah.
If the issue is, for example, I have my children are entitled. Okay, what's the action you prepared to take to transform that? And if they say, for example, I don't know, I will say, okay, well, maybe here's some things you may want to consider.
I want to complement that thought with something else from your book. In another area of your book, I'm going to read one of the passages and ask you to reflect on it. You said one of the greatest challenges that older generations have is that they don't have sufficient clarity of vision with respect to their own wealth and the desires or hopes they hold for their own children. In some cases, the older generation does have an idea of what they want for their children, but it is all framed from their own perspective. And usually, they have never directly asked their children what they want and need and hope for. In brackets, you have, this is a common great white elephant in numerous families. Your passage goes on to state, furthermore, since money and wealth is more often than not a difficult topic of conversation and therefore one to be avoided, since culturally, at least in WASP culture, and you have this in your book, White Anglo-Saxon Protestant culture, it has long been seen as vulgar to talk directly about money and wealth. Most families rarely talk about money and wealth, and hence shelter the younger generation from it and all of its implications, both for better and for worse. Why would you say that this is one of the greatest challenges?
Well, it's just one of those awkward things to talk about. There's two things, and I say this often whenever I speak, that there's two things that will impact a relationship if not discussed. Money and sex. And they're the two things that are kind of awkward to talk about. And it never ceases to amaze me that parents, particularly parents of wealthy parents, don't know how to start the conversation with their children about money. They usually assume that, do I need to tell them what the number is, what our net worth is, or what the business is worth? And my response is, you don't need to say that. They already have a fairly good idea, just based on your lifestyle. But the thing is what I'm referring to is how do we talk to each other about how we feel about money? You see, the whole focus on money and wealth is typically from a quantitative perspective.
Yes.
The structure and the how. I'd like to talk about the why. Why do you behave the way you do with money?
Okay. I've got a why. Yeah, go ahead, sorry. Go ahead.
So, societally, we haven't been conditioned or haven't considered the emotional side or the feeling side about money. We're so conditioned to think about the quantitative. So if as a parent I haven't thought about the emotional component, I can't even have a conversation with my kids because it hasn't even come into my radar. So
I want to ask you then. Yeah, go ahead.
So I created this concept called the money motto.
Yes.
And what the money motto is a subconscious belief that every single one of us has around money. And it's a belief that occurred, that got developed as a result of certain events that occurred in our life. So an event occurs, and as a result of that event, we make up a story or we attach meaning to that event. So in my case, I was bullied as a child, and the story that I told myself was that I don't fit in, I don't belong, and I'm not worthy, and I'm not valuable. So in my teens, I made the decision that if I make a lot of money, then I'll buy my way in and I'll be valuable. So my money motto became, money allows me to fit in. Now, we all have a money motto, but we've never really thought about it or articulated it. And that money motto or belief is going to impact our behaviors and how we handle it.
The money motto conversation is definitely something that I wanted to get into with you in this conversation. And I think, you know what, since you brought it up, we'll do it now, and thank you for raising it. Here's something you say about the money motto in your book here. You say in one section, Jeremy had to get clear on his core value, which you have here in brackets as humility, his why, as you put it, and uncover his money motto. In quotes, you say, I'm resentful of the money I have. And this is Jeremy speaking. He also has to become aware of the impact of his core value and money motto on relationships. Once all of this has been achieved, Jeremy had to start to behave in a way that his actions were in alignment with his core value and his why, so that he could experience a new, congruent way of being. This new way of being had to be applied in all of his relationships, especially the one he had with his father and those with his 3 cousins. Once this new pattern of interaction was launched and underway, Jeremy had to make room for some forgiveness for himself, his father, and his grandfather. That's an emotionally charged, complex perspective to articulate in your book. And I wanted to know, well, once we untangle this, I'm going to call it an intangible, the qualitative side of the conversation versus the quantitative side of the work that family offices do, how does untangling this qualitative element of the money motto, how does it move one's life forward in tangible ways? Okay,
it's a great question. So in the family enterprise world, there's 3 typical circles that operate, or entities. There's the family component of it, and then there's the business component and the ownership component. And these are all intermingled. So you may have a family member that is an owner and works in the business, so they're parts of all of the components. Or you may have a family member that doesn't own shares, they're just an employee. Or you may have a family member that doesn't work there and isn't an owner, so they're not involved in the business. So in this particular case, Jeremy is an owner and also was working in the business. But the challenge was he didn't like being in the business. He absolutely resented it. And, you know, as an employee, he was drawing a very nice salary, and as an owner, he was receiving some very nice dividend checks. But he resented the business. So we had to uncover what that resentment was really about. And as we did some work with Jeremy, we were able to help him see that he was resentful of his grandfather, who created the business, because his grandfather was a tyrant and actually belittled staff, including Jeremy's father. And Jeremy resented, his grandfather for this. And he would, because grandfather started the business, he identified the business with grandfather. So he was at a crossroads. I hate this thing, the business, which is really projecting my grandfather onto the business, but at the same time, this thing provides me an amazing life. We had to get Jeremy to take a look at what was really going on inside him, because he was manifesting all these negative behaviors to his fellow shareholders, which were his cousins, and the employees. He wasn't being a responsible owner. because he wasn't behaving as one, and he was a terrible employee. He had a sense of entitlement, and that, you know what, I can come in at 10 and leave at 2. Well, you know what, if you're vice president of a company, you don't really get to do that.
Yeah.
So the reason that family office brought me in was we need to determine whether Jeremy is really suitable for this role. And I remember getting an email from the CEO, who's Jeremy's cousin, 2 days after my first meeting. He says, "Boy, you work quick. Jeremy quit." What happened? I said, I held up a mirror for him and he didn't like it. but since then, he's now back in the business, right? He's now become a responsible owner. He's made peace and all that. But it was quite funny.
Oh, good. So he did manage to find himself and ground himself and then reconnect with the family business. Good.
Absolutely. But there was some time there, like my mentor Dov says, things get much better, much worse, and then much different.
Yes.
So, it got much worse very quickly.
You talked about the family structure, the family business, and there's some elements of family governance in what you're saying that are, once again, intangible but make a world of difference to the family itself. I want to support that statement with something that James Hughes Jr. wrote in his book, Family Wealth, Keeping It in the Family. And I know you're very familiar with James Hughes Jr. If any of our listeners aren't familiar with James Hughes Jr., he's described affably as the granddaddy of the family office space in the Americas. So pick up some of his writings if you want some very useful insight and perspective drawn from decades of wisdom in this space of working with families from all over the world. James Hughes Jr. says in his book, Family Wealth, Keeping It in the Family, he says, to successfully preserve wealth, a family must agree to create a system of representative governance through which it actively practices its values. And you've been talking a lot about that so far in this conversation. Each successive generation must reaffirm its participation in that system of governance. Because a family is, by definition, two or more individuals, any decision made by a family must involve joint decision-making. Joint decision-making expresses a system of governance. Recognizing that joint decision is a form of governance, and it's one of the fundamental first steps in wealth preservation. So there in his statement, I find some tangible elements of how what you do helps with family wealth preservation. Do you ever get feedback from clients after you've spent time with them? And I know you've got ongoing relationships with families all across North America and even across the globe. You ever get feedback from them on the tangible benefits they see from working with you?
Yeah, this particular, Jeremy's family, they became better owners. They all got on the same page.
Yeah.
So it created harmony, and they're able to accelerate their growth because they're not dealing with different visions. In another case, a family, older generation was able to go through forgiveness. They were able to heal and transform how they dealt with each other, and as a result, the next generation was able to step into their roles from a place of, we're all a unit instead of these divided, the three uncles sort of thing, right? Yeah. So it really, the biggest piece that families get as a result of working with us is we harmonize the family so that they can become better owners and better employees. And that, in turn, preserves wealth.
Incredible. I'm going to shift gears again, go back into your book, and just so that our listeners appreciate where we're going here. And even from my perspective, I really want to get deeper in understanding what it is you offer from a tangible perspective, because in our world, the qual contention is always, it's ever present. And just to clarify and add some tangibility to what you do, which you've demonstrated in this conversation so far, but I'm going to throw up another bullet point or another point on the scoreboard. I'm going to read from another section of your book around scripts, and you're talking about people rewriting their scripts, and I want to go there again. Here's what you said. All of us have scripts we play in our head, and for better or for worse, these scripts affect our lives in many ways that are more significant than most of us would care to admit. Many of us live each day listening to scripts such as, I'm too fat, or I'm too thin, or I'm too dumb. For many of us, we recite such messages as these to ourselves all too frequently, and the outcome is that we no longer recognize what we are doing. Unfortunately, these scripts are usually more negative than positive in their impact, and without realizing it, many of us have allowed the scripts to dictate our behavior to the extent that they exert a powerful influence over the way we live our lives. Just as we have scripts about ourselves, we have scripts about money. And here's where this is it's pretty interesting to me. You said we have scripts about money. Although we may have a variety of scripts about money, we usually have one that stands out as a central belief. I call this our money model, which you've referred to earlier. The following examples are commonly held money model beliefs. You've given 4 examples. Money is more money means more control is one of them. Another one is money allows me to fit in. Money makes me lovable, and money is a measure of my worth. Those are some of the scripts you've listed here. Franco, I'm gonna go here with you. I'm gonna ask you this question: what have you discovered your money motto is?
Oh, my money motto, it used to be money allows you to fit in.
Money allowed you to fit in.
Yeah, remember I shared that I got bullied, and as a result of the bullying, the script that I made up in my mind was that, I don't fit in, I don't belong, I'm not valuable, I'm worthless. So I made a decision in my teens that if I make a lot of money, then I'll fit in, I'll buy my way in.
Got it. So what's your what's your money motto now then?
My value is how
Okay.
I serve. Got nothing to do with money. So when I bring my value to the table and I serve,
yes,
money flows in. It's not about me, it's about who I'm serving.
Do clients get that?
They do after we work with them for a while, uncovering an individual's money model is a very powerful exercise. And when they see it at first, it stings a little bit. They don't like it. Because, something like they say, the truth hurts. But we're able to show them how their money model is impacting their lives because we're relationship beings, Declan, we take our money model, in other words, our relationship with money, into other relationships. So when you are working with a client, and you're in the room with them, there's not just the two of you. There's you and your money model and them and their money model. So there's 4 entities in that room. And your money model and their money model is going to be impacting the decision-making and the flow of the conversation without you guys even being aware of it.
So what you're saying... sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
So it's very important for individuals to have an idea of what their money model is. And if they're clear on it, the better. Because the other thing that's very powerful is, we did some research on this, is I was curious if there was a connection or a correlation between how we treat our money and how we treat those closest to us, including ourselves. And what we realized, and what we realize is that they're directly correlated. So how we treat money is how we treat relationships.
Can you expand on that? Give us an example of some of the things you found. Yeah.
I'll share mine first. So in my case, I had this belief that I didn't deserve money. I didn't deserve, wealth and abundance or good relationships. So what I would do is, whenever I reach a certain level of success, I would subconsciously self-sabotage. So I would invest in a stock that would go to zero, or an extreme. They're always giving of their time and their resources, and money flows through their hands like water, and at the end of the day, there's nothing left for them. So those are a couple of examples.
Now you've got a process, and this is what I liked about getting to know you through your book and talking to you personally. You actually have a process that you follow to get to understanding a client's money motto and translating that into actionable items to see tangible results. You have something in your book here. You say the process. It's a bit of a warning, but an encouraging statement at the same time. The process can be arduous and time-consuming since it involves a one-on-one interview or conversation with each member of the family in private to obtain a similarly clear picture of their own current reality as it relates to them and the rest of the family. And each individual, for each of them, we superimpose their current reality with their own desired reality and their stated dreams, desires, and goals. By asking each family member for their own unique and personal perspective, we find that most of our clients who have participated with us in this process have commented that for the most part, they have really felt and heard for the first time, or felt that they've been heard for the first time in their lives, and have some greater measure of hope that long sought after change might actually take place. Now, a tough question for you then would be, how can the family be certain that what you do really works?
They can't.
Wow, that's an authentic response.
And I'll tell you why. Because they have to be willing. They have to be committed to the work. Whenever I engage a new family, I'll say to them, I'm going to bring all of me to the table. I'm 110% committed to you. In order for this to work, in order for you, the family, to achieve what you said is important to you, whether it's harmony or unity, whatever it may be, you have to be willing to do the work as well. And I can only do so much for you. So, if the family is truly committed to doing the work and they do the work, they will achieve their goals. It's a partnership. It's a collaboration.
So that's important. That's important, I think, for anyone listening to the conversation now, to recognize that it's a partnership and a commitment, and it's really an exchange of value, right? The clients have to be committed, or whomever you're working with, they have to be committed to the process. And it goes back to my original question about how do we discern interest versus commitment, because that makes all the tangible difference in whether or not the work you do is going to be successful.
Yeah, and commitment involves letting go of things that no longer serve them.
So then would you say that, so would you then, just forgive me for just this thought that I wanted to just express to get your perspective on, would you then just, you're essentially just defining what the family profile would look like in a sense. You're saying that the family has to be, and I've heard this conversation when dealing with other families and other professionals, the family has to be open to being coached. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely. They have to be highly coachable. They have to be willing to receive feedback. And they have to be willing to be honest with themselves to the best of their ability.
All right. I'm going to go here now with this next question. If you were to provide in this conversation, I'm going to use the number 3 measures of success. After you worked with the family, what would you say that 3 measures of success would be? You can define it and give examples if you wish.
Certainly. So the first measure of success is they can have intimate, difficult conversations without those conversations being emotionally charged. So, for example, they could be sitting in a family meeting and an issue comes up around an old behavior, and family member turns to their brother and says, you know what, are you living your values? And brother looks and says, you know what, I'm not. So there's no judgment, there's no make wrong. It's just, you know what, They're holding each other accountable, is what I'm saying. Number two is there's a greater level of harmony and unity within the family. They're much more connected with each other and with themselves than they ever have been. And they have developed a code of conduct in how they govern themselves. And I'd like to talk about this for a little bit.
Yes, please.
A lot of families believe that just because they've got governance structures in place, things are going to be okay. Governance structures are designed to keep the individuals in an organization following a set of rules and procedures. But what we seem to overlook sometimes is that governance structure is designed to govern human beings, and these human beings have feelings, beliefs, and behaviors. And until behaviors are aligned with that governance structure, the governance structure won't work. So I'll give you an example. Enron was a company that legally and on paper had the best governance structure ever, but yet the company failed because of the executives' bad behaviors. So when we work with families, we talk about developing codes of conduct with oneself and with each other on how we handle each other, how we behave with each other. So, you can have governance that says, we're going to respect each other, but the family meetings are full of yelling and screaming. Well, that's not exactly respect. As the saying goes, one does not do things to be compassionate. One is compassionate and hence acts a certain way. So another deliverable for us is the family acts and behaves their values.
So those are three things that you've shared. Now, I laugh because I have a sentiment about what your response is going to be to this question. Of the three measures of success that you've just shared with us, have you found many families that are hitting those measures of success?
Well, we've worked with a number of families, and it's a work in progress,
okay.
Right? Because the work that we do is identifying beliefs that have been impacting individuals' behaviors for 20, 30, 40, 50 years in some cases, and we're talking about reprogramming those beliefs so that the behaviors can be different. So it's a practice, it's a way of being, right? Like I said earlier, I still have that desire and that automatic knee-jerk to want to please. That's part of my innateness. It's part of my conditioning.
Sure. And
I have to be cognizant and diligent on that negative behavior. So, when clients implement the work we do, and that's the key. It goes back to the action, right? Are you interested in changing, or are you committed to change? So it's a daily practice. It's a way of living. It's a way of being.
In your last statement, you just raised a topic that I wanted to explore. You talked about implementation and about the family participating. What tools can you leave with our listeners to help them get started with their family healing process?
Well, I think the first question that someone may want to ask themselves is they have to be willing to be really honest with themselves. Is what's my role in the situation my family's currently at? So in other words, take full accountability for one's role in the current situation.
Okay, accountability. What else would you say?
Well, then I think the second step is to, ask the other person in that relationship, how has my actions or my beliefs or my behaviors impacted you? So if you and I were in a relationship and I would, if I were to say, Declan, I realize that my personal sense of insecurity and lack of self-worth has been running me or impacting me, and I, as a result of that, believe you are better than I am, so I put you at a pedestal. I don't have any compassion for you, so I'm not there for you. So I'm curious, how does my beliefs and behaviors impact our relationship?
Okay, I'm going to be incredibly transparent with you. I know we're on the phone, but when you just said that on the phone, I felt my physiology freeze up. Like I felt like a deer in headlights. Like this is too much emotion. I didn't know how to respond to it. I'm being incredibly transparent.
And I appreciate that, right? You see, that's the reaction that we typically get. Oh my God, I'm feeling too much. I can't feel. I don't want to feel.
What do I do with all this information?
What do I do with all these feelings? Oh my God, I'm going to shut down. Or let me have a scotch.
I see when you said I could do a scotch. You know, a single malt came to mind. I knew what to do with that information.
You know, I'm so glad you share that because, you know, we have been conditioned to not feel. We shut down our feelings.
Okay, so you use the word feeling, and I know, and I'll tell you, I'll give you some of my family background. Like my father is formally trained as an avionics engineer, so he's a relatively stoic fellow. And when you talk about feelings to a guy like that, he will look at you like you're from a different galaxy. He's not even formally trained, and that's just not his nature to talk about emotion. So how do you get there with the generations who don't even want to embrace this sort of communication? It's more of a do what I say type environment because the authoritarian process of dealing with the family is what they've embraced and all they know. Like, how do you even get to feeling with these individuals?
So, you know, there's a couple of ways. One of the questions I may ask, you know, a stoic founder like your dad is I would say, you know what, Robert, I'm willing to bet that it was never your intention to achieve this incredible success and build this massive wealth so that one day your success and hard work could be the detriment to your family.
And I would say confirmed, yes. Okay, I get that.
Right? And I would even go further and say, as a father, this was never your intention.
Yeah.
And how do I get, you know, these stoic fellas to connect with feelings?
Yeah.
I help them uncover their money model.
Yeah.
Because they're perfectly okay talking about money.
And
then when I show them,
can relate to that.
You know, here's your money model, they go, okay. Now here's how your money model impacts the relationship with your spouse or with yourself or with your kids. They get connected pretty quickly to their feelings.
It helps too when you've got some seniority, right? It helps. I mean, it helps when you've got some seniority in what you do. And the reason I say that is, you know what? I'll tell you. I'll say it in the words that were used by Dr. Kirby Rusblock in her book, The Complete Family Office. She just recently launched this book. It was published by Bloomberg Wiley, and I've had an opportunity to communicate with Kirby, and I know you know her as well. I find her to be a tremendous talent. In her book, she says this. She says, serving the ultra-affluent family in a family office has both opportunities and challenges and is certainly not a predictable exercise. The individuals who serve the family office are typically well-seasoned, expert advisors in whom families have supreme trust and confidence to manage the complexities of their wealth. These prized professionals do not typically follow a linear career path. Rather, they typically develop a certain expertise in investments, tax, legal, estate planning, financial planning, accounting, or wealth transfer planning, and their desire to serve families is their top priority. And they may opt out of an advisory or sales position in a larger financial institute that would likely afford higher bonus structures, perks, or incentives. Now, this goes to the core of the character of a seasoned professional that would serve, choose to serve wealthy families. How much of that description in Dr. Russ Block's book do you see yourself? Does this reflect you in a large degree, or has your path been different?
Oh, it fits me to a T. My background's in investment management. I managed a large pool of assets for a number of individuals and families, and I realized that I was good at it, but it wasn't my passion. My passion was the whole money model piece, the emotional side of wealth. So I left a very successful business to create Veritage. And for the longest time, Veritage was bleeding edge.
Yeah.
Struggled to get people to know who I am and what I do and that I'm even out there. So, it fits me to a T. Like I said earlier, it goes back to why I serve these folks. I just desire for them to have what I didn't have as a child, which is harmony.
Wow. You use words like "I desire for." They're impactful because it sounds like you've resolved quite clearly in your mind and in your heart to have a purpose. Okay, so here's the flip side to this conversation. Why only wealthy families, Franco? Why have you dedicated your life to serving only wealthy families?
Because they have greater impact. Some of the families that I serve have thousands and thousands of employees.
Wow. Very good perspective.
And the other thing is family enterprise in Canada represent 68% of the national GDP.
Powerful stat.
Okay, and there's a lot of small family-owned businesses in there, but there's some large ones that are going to have a greater share. And 78% of all the new job creations come from family-owned businesses. And the flip side of that is 70% of transfer from first to second generations fail. That's a global stat between 1% and 2%. So it's a massive responsibility to ensure that these family businesses transition to the next generation.
So in our conversation thus far, you've articulated, I think, quite clearly some of the tangible value that what you do brings to a family, and not only just the family in one generation, but successive generation. We talked about wealth preservation. We covered how your money model process, we covered a process, how it works, generally speaking, of course, in the time that we have. Okay, so let's get down to nuts and bolts, okay? I know this is definitely a delicate subject about how families access professionals and how they retain them, and especially if there's no pre-existing relationship. How do you trust that this is going to work? I want to quote some perspective from the Family Office book. This is a book by Richard C. Wilson. The full name of the book is The Family Office Book, Investing Capital for the Ultra-Affluent. The perspective in this book is more about capital deployment and capital management across different types of investment solutions, alternatives, traditionals, passion investments, and so on. In one section of the book, he says this, and I'll get you to reflect on this statement, okay? It says, while many single-family office structures serve to provide many life management services on top of financial management solutions, this is not always the case with multifamily offices. Many times when multifamily offices offer these types of additional services, i.e. this is the life management services, what they're doing is they're doing it at far reduced prices or for free. As a line item, they may lose the firm money, but are offered to create a marketplace advantage over the other offices. Benefits that are non-financial and could be used for strategic advantage include life coaching, golf or private club memberships, or the use of vacation properties, luxury vehicles, or yachts. As competition among family offices grows, it is expected that these types of additional benefits of becoming part of a multifamily office will steadily increase in popularity. Richard's perspective that, and you and I both know Richard, how do you respond to Richard's perspective that specifically what he says here is that these life management services are usually just a line item as they lose the firm money but are offered to create a marketplace advantage over other offices? What's your sentiment on that statement?
Well, let me ask you this question. Let me answer
Sure.
it this way. If I give you something for free, how much do you value it?
I typically do not value things that are free in the same sense that I would have had to earn it.
Right, or if you invested in it.
Sure.
Whether that's, either monetarily or time or emotionally.
Confirmed. When people invest, they value and they will tend to do the work. So one of the things that makes us quite unique in the marketplace is when we engage a client or a family, we'll say to them, I'm 110% committed to you and your family in getting this work done, getting you to the end goal. I expect the same from you. And how you do that is you write a check up front. So we charge our clients fees up front, in full, and then non-refundable. Excuse me?
That's how they show me commitment.
Talk to me again. Say that again. I think I heard what you said.
We charge our clients,
yes, when
we first start working with them, our fees, they're up front, they're payable up front, they're paid in full, and they're non-refundable.
And that's the commitment factor.
Yeah.
Oh.
So if someone writes a check for X, they're going to be typically committed to getting the work done, to getting the value out of the work. They will probably dig a little deeper, knowing that there's X amount of dollars on the line.
That's a fair statement. I'm sure that that shocks a lot of people. It shocked me just now when you said it, but I'm sure you've been able to demonstrate your value in existing relationships that you have that warrant that sort of commitment up front because you're focused on an end game with the family.
Yeah. I'm 100%. So whenever I work with a family, I have a vision that I hold for them. So that vision could be...
sorry, forgive me. I'm going to go there again. When you say something like that jumps out at me and just grabs me by the heart, you say you're committed to them. How did you phrase it?
I will hold a vision for them.
You will hold a vision for the family.
For them, of what they're capable of. So, for example, I'll hold a vision of a father and daughter forgiving themselves, and getting closer together. Or I hold a vision of Jeremy, for example, working in the family business and truly contributing and letting go of that sense of entitlement.
That's incredible. I mean, even that perspective alone is it's insightful the way you look at it. Okay, but you know what? On the flip side, we've got folks listening to this conversation that are saying, okay, and I hope you don't get offended by what I'm about to say, Franco, but some folks listening are probably thinking, that's nice and warm and fuzzy and fluffy, but so what? I know you and I have covered quite a bit so far in this conversation about what the tangibles are, what the actual process is. So we've got some empirical pointers to direct the outcome that we're aiming at, and empirical evidence to say that it works because you've seen results in some of the work that you do. So the folks listening that say this is still too fuzzy, and I think that's born out of a sense of it's just too ambiguous. I can't connect with it, maybe because they're let's call it left brain dominant. They can't even connect. What's your maybe 1 or 2 line response to somebody like that who says, I just can't understand what you're saying? What's your response?
Well, I think we all want more in our life. We may have, some folks will have a lot of money and they want something else in their life. So The question that I will have for them is what else do you want in your life, and what are you committed to do to achieve that? So it could be as simple as, you know what, I want to be able to have a deeper meaning and a deeper sense of purpose, or I want to be more connected with my family members. You know, so it boils down to what's really important to you, and what are you committed to doing to achieving that.
And some of the value that you and your team brings to the table is actually helping clients parse that out. I mean, it's easy to understand, I guess, the words, what's important to you, but how do you now get there? And that's where the magic happens, is how do you go through that journey, that exploratory conversation where you don't get lost down a rabbit hole of emotional turmoil. And I guess that's some of the guidance that your team provides too when you work with a family.
Yeah.
You also, I know you're a busy fellow while you're jet-setting around the world talking at different international conferences. You're also a prolific writer. We just talked about your book, The Great White Elephant. You shared with me that you've got another special project soon to be released. Did you want to share a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I've got my fourth book, which should be out in April or May. It's in the editor's hands now, so it moves at their pace. So yeah. I'm practicing patience.
Good.
Is deals with entitlement. When I wrote Great White Elephant. Hello, you there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah. So when I wrote Great White Elephant, I thought that the elephant in the room was the missing conversations. And as I spent the last year and a half speaking to various conferences and working with various families, what became glaringly apparent for me is that the biggest white elephant is entitlement. And as I was doing research for this next book, I just got present to that entitlement is everywhere. It's in our schools, it's in our homes, it's in our universities, it's in businesses, it's in family businesses, but more importantly, it's in ourselves as individuals. And as I went through my own personal journey over the last probably 9 months with that speaker program that I mentioned earlier, mm-hmm. I realized that I have been operating from a place of being an entitled brat.
I've heard you say that about yourself, yes.
And as I went through that process, I emerged as a contributing leader. And so the book talks about how can one identify their entitled ways and what can one do to transform into being a contributing leader, because we can't truly contribute from a place of entitlement. It's impossible. So the book is saying, you know what, the next global epidemic is entitlement. And how we're dealing with it.
Global epidemic is entitlement.
Yep.
That's a big, brash statement. Wow. And I guess you're supporting your thesis with some research that you've done.
Yep. So the title of the book is controversial, as you know me, Declan.
It's just we like that about you. You keep people on their toes.
It's called Entitled Brat, or Contributing Entitlement Is. Here are the symptoms. Here's where it come from, and here's the impact, and here's what you do to transform it into a contributing leader. That was a fun project. Yes. I'm really, really pleased with it. I'm happy with it. It's a lot of my own personal journey over the last 9 months. So I'm very pleased with it.
Good. I'm glad. I mean, if the timing works, I know you're going to be touring, promoting it, and talking to different family offices and different institutions, private wealth institutions around the world about the work that you've done. So maybe when we find some time to have you settle in Vancouver again, we'll probably have you back to talk a little bit more about that book. I wanted to just ask about whether or not that project is connected in any way to some work that you're doing with Kirby, Dr. Rosbach.
Oh, yeah. So Kirby and I are collaborating and have created a 9-day experiential leadership workshop for enterprising families so they can discover who they are, dream who they want to become, design their destiny. And we've chosen to do this in collaboration with Me to We. So we're going to be going down to the Amazon in Ecuador.
Wow, okay.
Yep. And to be part of a transformational journey to celebrate and unite the family in discovering their tribe. We'll call it Discover Your Tribe Retreat.
Wow.
And it'll be coupled with an outreach experience of volunteering to help build a school.
Brilliant.
So it's going to be fun. So the learnings will be to uncover their current tribal heritage. What are the dynamic? What are the systems? What are the archetypes? What's working? What's not? Dream possibilities and developing new dynamics and systems that support the tribe. Create rituals that will sustain the tribe. Design the preferred future. How will you prepare your tribe and define itself for a lasting legacy? How to build a roadmap so that the family will conceive the critical success elements of the journey, and how to design the family's new reality, how to sculpture their preferred future. So we're doing that in the fall, and we're thrilled to be partnering up, as I said, with MeToWe, which is an amazing organization.
Yes.
And, so that's been my pet project for the year, and we've just been sending out this invitation to a handful of select families, so if you'd like, I could send it to you.
You know what? Please do. There's some families that we work with that I think would love to learn more about the opportunity, and if it makes sense, I'd be happy to. How we run a pretty close knit relationship with our families, so happy to actually introduce them personally to you if they are interested in proceeding.
Thanks, and and the fun part is we get to go to the Amazon, man. Like, this is so cool.
I love that you would do that. I'm curious. Why did you choose the Amazon?
Well, last summer, my son and I went down to help build a school in this exact same location, and we stayed at this absolutely beautiful 3.5, 4-star lodge in the middle of nowhere. And I was so taken back by the beauty and the work we did and the surroundings. I thought to myself, wouldn't it be great to bring families here? Sort of a retreat to explore, investigate, and collaborate. And that's where the dream started. And now it's going to become a reality.
Love it. I love that you're always at the leading edge of thought leadership. And I think families that recognize the value that you bring to the table benefit because of it. Thank you for your time. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to give our listeners a little bit more about the book we've been talking about in this conversation, The Great White Elephant, Why Rich Kids Hate Their Parents. It offers a simple methodology for improving your chances of achieving success in your business succession planning and wealth transition to the next generation, while leaving them properly prepared, both intellectually and emotionally, for that inheritance, ownership, power, and wealth, and all that it implies. The book offers a methodology for navigating the awkward conversations, which you call the great white elephants, that can ultimately undermine a family and its desire to perpetuate the family's wealth, and that's the book we've been talking about today. Franco, is there anything else that you wanted to probably leave with us before we conclude our conversation? It's been a wonderful talk. I think there was a ton of value provided in this conversation for our listeners, and even for myself, I learned a bit more perspective from you. How do families get in touch with you if they need to? Why don't you share that with them?
They can reach us at the website, www.veritage.ca. Veritage is spelled Veritage.ca. There's a place where they can just drop us an email, and it's a very confidential place to say, I'd like to reach out, learn some more. They can buy the books on there. So that's how they reach out to us. And also, we are in the process of revamping our website. Mm-hmm. So we will be launching that probably on Monday. So we'll have a new, fresh-looking website on Monday. But in the meantime, they can go to veritage.ca.
Still connect with you. And I know you've got, I think, what you called a resource package or resource kit that you share or you mail out to clients who are interested. That includes a little bit of worksheet information, a little bit more about the firm. I know you have those. I guess those they can pick up from the conversation with you as well.
Yep.
Awesome. And lastly, before we hang up and look to reconnecting again in the next few weeks, share the name of your upcoming book and where should folks be able to pick them up and where should they reach out to you for book signings or anything like that? Do you have any of those details planned just yet?
So the next book is called Entitled Bratch or Contributing Leader. We're hoping to launch it in April or May. We don't have any book launch parties booked as of yet, but I do have a number. I do have a number of speaking engagements already booked.
Perfect.
So I'm going to be in London in April, Lake Como in May, Chicago in April. I think I'm in Calgary in May as well. But if you go to the website, you can see the speaking list there, or you can also follow me on LinkedIn. My profile's got all my speaking engagements as well.
Thank you, Franco. I really appreciate it. Thanks so very much for your time. All the best to you and your family, and keep up the great work. The families that we work with truly do benefit from the valuable work that you and your team do.
Thank you so much, Declan. It's been an absolute pleasure being on the phone with you.
Talk to you soon, my friend. All the very best.
Okay.
Bye-bye now.